Chapter 1. A Quiet Childhood in East Germany. Angela was born on July 17, 1954, in Hamburg, West Germany, but her family didn't stay there long. When she was just a few weeks old, her father, Horst Kasner, made a surprising decision. He moved the family to East Germany. This was unusual because most people wanted to leave the East, not go there. But Horst had a mission. He was a pastor and wanted to serve in the small village of Templin. Life in Templin was simple, but not easy. The family lived in a small house near the church. Angela's father was strict and serious. He believed in discipline and hard work. Her mother, Herlinde, was softer and kinder. She loved books and teaching, and had once been a teacher herself. She passed her love of learning to Angela. Angela was a quiet and thoughtful child. She liked to watch and listen more than talk. Her big blue eyes were always observing, always curious. Even as a little girl, she seemed older than her years. People in the village noticed her. "She's so clever," they said. But life in East Germany was full of limits. The country was under communist rule, and people had to follow strict rules. There were no free elections, and the government controlled everything. What people said, what they learned, even what they could dream. If you spoke out against the system, there were serious consequences. Angela learned this early. At school, Angela was an excellent student. She loved math and science, subjects where there was always a clear answer. But school wasn't just about learning. It was also about loyalty to the communist government. Students had to join groups like the Young Pioneers, where they learned to follow the rules of the state. Angela joined, like most children, but she didn't stand out. She kept her head down and avoided attention. One day, a teacher asked Angela to recite a poem for a school event. Angela loved poetry, and she practiced for hours at home. But when the day came, she felt nervous. She stood in front of the class, holding her paper tightly. Her hands shook a little. Then she took a deep breath and began to read. Her voice was soft but steady. The room was silent. Everyone listened. When she finished, there was applause. Angela smiled just a little. She had done well. Life in Templin wasn't all hard work. Angela had moments of joy too. She loved playing outside with her younger brother and sister. They climbed trees, ran through fields, and explored the woods near their home. Angela was often the leader, coming up with games and solving problems. "Let's try this," she would say, her face lighting up with excitement. At home, the Kasner family lived modestly. There wasn't much money for luxuries, but Herlinde made sure there were books. Angela read everything she could find: stories, history, and even science books. She loved getting lost in the pages, imagining faraway places and new ideas. But there was a shadow over their lives. The Berlin Wall stood as a symbol of division. Angela's grandparents lived in West Germany, but she couldn't visit them. Letters were rare, and phone calls almost impossible. Sometimes Angela wondered what life was like on the other side of the wall. Did children there have more freedom? More chances? One cold winter evening, Angela's family sat together in their small living room. The fire crackled softly. Her father spoke about the future. "Angela," he said, looking at her, "you must always do your best. Education is the key. It will open doors for you." Angela nodded, listening carefully. She didn't fully understand, but she felt the weight of his words. As Angela grew older, she began to notice more about the world around her. She saw how some people in Templin were afraid to speak freely. She heard whispers about people being watched, about neighbors reporting on each other. It was a strange and tense time. Angela learned to be careful. She kept her thoughts to herself and focused on her studies. Despite the challenges, Angela's childhood taught her important lessons. She learned to be patient. She learned to think before speaking, and she learned the value of education. One summer day, something unforgettable happened. Angela and her friends were playing near a pond. They dared each other to jump in, even though the water was freezing. Angela hesitated. She looked at the cold, dark water and felt a knot of fear in her stomach. But then, she took a deep breath and jumped. The water was icy, and she gasped for air, but she felt proud. She had faced her fear. That moment stayed with Angela. It was a small event, but it showed her something about herself. She could be brave when it mattered. Years later, Angela would remember these early experiences. Growing up in East Germany, she learned to navigate a world full of restrictions. She learned to adapt, to observe, and to wait for the right moment. These qualities would one day help her lead a nation. For now, though, Angela was just a girl with big dreams. She didn't know what her future would hold, but she was ready to work hard. She was ready to face challenges, and deep down, she believed in something more, a life beyond the walls around her. Her story was just beginning. Chapter 2. The Little Girl Who Loved Math and Science. Angela was not like most children in Templin. While other kids loved running around all day, she often sat quietly with a book or a puzzle. She was curious about how things worked. Why did the stars shine at night? How could machines move so perfectly? Angela wanted answers, and she knew exactly where to find them. Science. At school, Angela was one of the best students in her class. She had a sharp mind and a love for numbers. Math was her favorite subject. She liked how the problems had clear answers. There's always a solution, she thought. Angela enjoyed the feeling of solving something that seemed impossible at first. It was like unlocking a treasure chest. Her teachers noticed her talent early. "Angela, you have a gift," said her math teacher one day. Angela blushed. She wasn't used to compliments, but the words stayed with her. Life in East Germany was not easy for girls who loved science. People expected girls to become teachers, nurses, or secretaries. But Angela didn't care about those expectations. She wanted to follow her interests no matter what. One day, Angela found an old book about the universe in her family's small bookshelf. It was dusty, and the pages were yellow. but she was fascinated. The book explained how stars were born and how planets moved around the sun. Angela couldn't put it down. Maybe I'll be a scientist one day, she thought. It was a dream she didn't share with many people. At home, Angela often helped her father in the garden. While planting flowers or vegetables, they talked about life and learning. Her father believed in hard work and discipline, and he pushed Angela to do her best in everything. "You have to be better than the rest," he said one evening. "Only then will you succeed." Angela took those words to heart. She didn't just want to be good. She wanted to excel. But her life wasn't only about school and studying. Angela loved to build things with her hands. On rainy days, she would sit at the kitchen table with a pile of tools, taking apart radios and clocks to see how they worked. Her mother worried she might break something, but Angela always managed to put everything back together. One afternoon, her neighbor, Mr. Schmidt, noticed her fixing a broken lamp. "You're clever, Angela," he said with a laugh. "You're like a little engineer." Angela smiled shyly. She liked being called clever. Science wasn't just something Angela enjoyed. It became her way of understanding the world. In East Germany, there was a lot she couldn't say or do. But with science, everything made sense. The laws of physics didn't change. Numbers didn't lie. However, being smart came with challenges. Some classmates teased her for always raising her hand in class. "Oh, here comes Angela with all the answers," they would say. Angela pretended not to hear them, but sometimes the words stung. Still, she didn't stop. Her teachers encouraged her to enter a local math competition. Angela felt nervous. What if she didn't win? But she decided to try. The competition was held in a large, cold school hall. Dozens of students sat at desks, solving difficult problems. Angela focused hard, her pencil flying across the page. Hours later, the results were announced. Angela had won. She held her certificate tightly and smiled. For the first time, she felt truly proud of herself. Back at home, her mother hugged her. "You've worked so hard," she said. Her father nodded, though he reminded Angela not to let success go to her head. "Stay humble," he said. Angela promised she would, but success didn't always bring happiness. Angela wanted to study physics when she grew up, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. Few women became scientists in East Germany. Most of her friends talked about getting married or finding simple jobs. They didn't understand her dreams. "Why do you care so much about math and science?" a friend asked one day. Angela shrugged. How could she explain? For her, solving problems was like solving the mysteries of life. It wasn't just work, it was joy. As Angela grew older, her love for science only deepened. She began to dream of bigger challenges, bigger questions. What if she could make a discovery that would change the world? But she also knew her dreams were risky. In East Germany, the government controlled everything, including education. What if they didn't let her follow her path? One evening, Angela sat by the window, staring out at the stars. She wondered what her future would hold. The world outside seemed so big, and she felt so small. But she had something special, her determination. If I work hard enough, she thought, maybe I can do something extraordinary. Angela didn't know it then, but her love for science would shape her life in unexpected ways. It would teach her to think logically, to stay calm under pressure, and to solve problems step by step. These skills would not only make her a great scientist, they would one day help her lead a country. For now, though, Angela was just a young girl with a love for math and science, a head full of dreams, and a heart full of questions. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she was determined to find them. Chapter 3. Life Behind the Berlin Wall. Angela grew up in East Germany, a country divided by politics and a concrete wall. The Berlin Wall didn't just separate cities, it separated lives, families, and dreams. Angela knew this wall well. It was a powerful symbol of the limits in her life. East Germany was a land of rules. The government controlled almost everything. It decided what people could say, where they could travel, and even what jobs they could have. There were no free elections. There was no freedom of speech. People had to be very careful about what they said and to whom they said it. Angela learned this at a young age. Her parents taught her to think before speaking. "Don't talk too much outside the house," her father warned. Angela listened. She learned to be quiet and to observe. She listened carefully to what people said, but she rarely spoke her own thoughts. It wasn't safe. The government had spies everywhere. They were called the Stasi. They watched people closely. They listened to phone calls, read letters, and even asked neighbors to report on each other. If someone spoke against the government, they could lose their job, or worse. Angela saw how this fear affected everyone around her. One day, Angela's teacher gave the class an assignment. The students had to write an essay about how much they loved their country. Angela stared at the blank page in front of her. She didn't feel proud of her government. She felt frustrated by the limits it placed on people's lives. But she couldn't write that. Instead, she wrote a simple, safe essay. She didn't want trouble. Angela was a careful student, but she wasn't afraid to think deeply. She asked herself questions about the world around her. Why was the government so afraid of free speech? Why couldn't people travel freely? She didn't always find answers, but she kept asking. Life behind the Berlin Wall wasn't only about rules, it was also about waiting. People waited for things to change. They waited in long lines for food and clothes. Angela's family lived modestly. Her mother, Herlinde, made most of Angela's clothes by hand. Her father, Horst, focused on his work as a pastor, helping people find hope in difficult times. One day, Angela's family received a rare letter from her grandparents in West Germany. They wrote about their lives on the other side of the wall. There were more choices, more freedoms, and more opportunities. Angela read the letter with wide eyes. She imagined what it would be like to visit her grandparents. But she knew that wasn't possible. Despite the restrictions, Angela found small ways to enjoy life. She loved spending time with her family and playing with her younger siblings. She also loved to read. Books opened a world beyond the wall. They gave her a glimpse of places she could only dream of visiting. Sometimes, Angela's family would listen to Western radio stations late at night. The signal wasn't always clear, and the sound would cut in and out, but it was thrilling. Angela heard stories of freedom and democracy. It was a different world, a world she could only imagine. Angela's father often talked about the importance of patience. "Change will come," he said. But change seemed so far away. Angela wondered if she would ever see the world outside East Germany. One summer, Angela's school took the students on a trip to a government building in Berlin. The students were supposed to learn about the country's leaders and their great achievements. Angela sat quietly, listening to the guide. But she noticed something strange. The leaders didn't seem interested in the people they were supposed to serve. They seemed more interested in staying in power. Angela didn't say anything. She knew better than to speak her mind. But that day, something inside her changed. She started to think more about leadership. What did it mean to lead? Could a leader truly care about their people? At home, Angela shared her thoughts carefully with her mother. Herlinde listened and smiled. "You have a good heart," she said. "Never lose it." The Berlin Wall was more than just a physical barrier. It divided people emotionally. Angela felt this deeply. She longed to visit her grandparents, to see the other side. She often asked herself, "Why can't we be together?" On her way to school each day, Angela would pass by posters of the government's leaders. They smiled from the walls, but their smiles felt empty. Angela couldn't help but wonder what they were afraid of. Why did they need so many rules? Angela's childhood in East Germany wasn't all hardship, but it was full of lessons. She learned to be patient and to think carefully. She learned the power of listening and observing. And she learned to stay calm, even in a world full of fear. One winter evening, Angela sat by the window of her small home. The snow fell softly outside. She thought about the future. She didn't know what was ahead, but she felt something stirring inside her, a quiet determination. She wanted more than the life she saw around her. Years later, Angela would remember these moments. Living behind the Berlin Wall taught her how to adapt and survive. It taught her to think deeply and to stay strong. These lessons would guide her in ways she couldn't imagine. For now, though, Angela was just a girl growing up in a divided country. The wall was high and the rules were strict, but Angela had something powerful inside her. Hope. She believed that one day things would change. One day the wall would come down. Chapter 4. Studying Physics. A woman in a man's world. Angela had always loved science. Numbers made sense to her. Equations were like puzzles, and she enjoyed solving them. While others saw science as difficult or boring, Angela saw beauty. She knew what she wanted to do. She would study physics. But in East Germany in the 1970s, this was an unusual choice for a young woman. Most women studied teaching, nursing, or secretarial work. Physics was seen as a man's field. People raised their eyebrows when Angela told them her plans. Some said, "Are you sure? Physics is very hard." Others asked, "Why not choose something easier?" Angela heard their doubts, but didn't let them stop her. She wasn't afraid of hard work. She wasn't afraid of standing out. She had made up her mind. In 1973, Angela began studying at Leipzig University. The university was big and full of students, but Angela didn't feel at home right away. Most of her classmates were men. They seemed confident and loud. Angela, on the other hand, was quiet and reserved. She listened more than she spoke. Her first physics lecture was in a large, cold hall. The professor explained complicated theories. Angela took careful notes, her pen moving quickly across the page. The equations filled the blackboard, and many students struggled to keep up. Angela loved it. For her, the class wasn't just challenging, it was exciting. But studying physics wasn't easy. Angela often spent long nights in the library, surrounded by heavy books and endless papers. She worked on experiments in the lab, sometimes failing again and again before finding the right answer. There were moments of frustration. "Why won't this work?" she would ask herself, staring at her notes. But she never gave up. One day, Angela faced a particularly difficult test. The questions were tough, and time was running out. Angela felt her hands shaking as she worked through the problems. She glanced around and saw other students looking just as nervous. But she reminded herself to stay calm. Step by step, she worked through each problem. When the results came back, Angela had one of the highest scores in the class. She smiled quietly, feeling a small burst of pride. She had proven to herself and others that she belonged in physics. Angela wasn't just smart. She was also very determined. In the lab, she worked harder than anyone else. She wasn't afraid to ask questions, even when they sounded simple. Her professors noticed her dedication. One professor said, "Angela doesn't just study physics. She lives it." But there were still challenges. Some of her male classmates didn't take her seriously. "You're too quiet," one of them joked. "How will you ever succeed in science?" Angela didn't respond. She let her work speak for her. Outside of class, life wasn't much easier. East Germany was a strict and controlled country. Even at the university, students had to follow government rules. Angela joined the Free German Youth, a communist student group, as most students were required to do. She attended the meetings, but she didn't let politics distract her from her studies. Angela also had to deal with the practical difficulties of life. There wasn't much money, and resources were limited. Textbooks were old, and lab equipment was often broken or missing. But Angela made the best of what she had. She learned to adapt and find solutions with what was available. Despite the obstacles, there were moments of joy. Angela loved solving a tough problem or completing a successful experiment. She felt a deep satisfaction every time she found the answer. Physics, for her, wasn't just a subject. It was a way to understand the world. Angela's favorite topic was quantum mechanics. This branch of physics dealt with the tiniest particles in the universe, things too small to see with the naked eye. It was complicated and abstract, but Angela found it fascinating. She would sit for hours, reading about how particles behaved in strange and surprising ways. One evening, Angela stayed late in the lab, working on an experiment about light and energy. The room was quiet, except for the hum of machines. Angela adjusted a lens carefully, her hands steady. Finally, she saw the results she had been waiting for. Her heart raced with excitement. "It worked," she whispered to herself. Moments like this made all the hard work worth it. Angela also made a few close friends during her university years. They studied together, shared ideas, and supported each other. These friendships helped Angela feel less alone in a world where she often felt out of place. During her final year, Angela worked on a research project about chemical reactions. It was a difficult topic, but Angela loved the challenge. She spent weeks collecting data, running tests, and analyzing results. Her project was a success, and her professors were impressed. When Angela graduated, she earned high marks and the respect of her professors. But more importantly, she had proven something to herself. She could succeed in a field where few women dared to go. She had shown that hard work, patience, and determination could overcome any barrier. Looking back, Angela's years at Leipzig University shaped her in many ways. She learned to think critically and solve problems. She learned to stay calm under pressure and to work through challenges step by step. These skills would stay with her throughout her life. But at the time, Angela didn't know where her path would lead. She dreamed of becoming a scientist, working on important discoveries. She thought her future would be in the lab. She didn't know that one day, the careful and logical thinking she learned in physics would help her lead a country. For now, though, Angela was simply a young woman with big dreams. She had faced challenges, but she had never given up, and she was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 5. The Fall of the Berlin Wall, A New Beginning. It was a cold evening in November 1989. Angela was at home, listening to the radio. She heard a news report that made her heart race. People were gathering at the Berlin Wall, thousands of them. Some were shouting, others were crying. The reporter said the wall might soon be open. Angela couldn't believe it. The Berlin Wall had stood for nearly 30 years. It was more than just a wall. It divided families, friends, and an entire country. It was a symbol of everything East Germans couldn't do. And now, it was falling. Angela turned off the radio and sat in silence. Her mind raced. What would this mean for East Germany? For her own life? The next morning, she woke early and turned on the news. There were images of people climbing the wall. Some were hammering at it, breaking pieces off as souvenirs. Others were hugging and laughing. Angela watched closely. The world she had always known was changing before her eyes. At work, Angela heard her colleagues whispering about the news. She worked as a scientist in a small laboratory. It was a safe, quiet job, far from the political chaos of the streets. But even there, people couldn't stop talking about what had happened. "The wall is gone," one colleague said, with tears in his eyes. Angela felt a mix of emotions. She was excited, but also nervous. Life in East Germany had been strict, but it was familiar. Now, everything felt uncertain. What happens next? She wondered. The weeks after the wall fell were filled with hope and confusion. West Germans came to the East, bringing gifts and stories of freedom. East Germans crossed into the West, seeing a new world for the first time. The streets were alive with energy. People talked about democracy, reunification, and a future without borders. Angela didn't rush to join the celebrations. She watched from the sidelines, thinking deeply. She was cautious, as always. This is a time for listening and learning, she thought. Soon, Angela started attending local meetings. People were forming new political groups. They wanted to create a better future for East Germany. Angela was curious. She didn't know much about politics, but she wanted to understand. One evening, Angela went to a meeting of a new party called the Democratic Awakening. The room was small and crowded. People spoke passionately about democracy and human rights. Angela listened quietly, taking it all in. She didn't speak much, but when she did, people noticed her calm and thoughtful manner. A few weeks later, someone approached Angela after a meeting. "You have good ideas," they said. "We need someone like you." Angela was surprised. She had never thought about joining politics. She was a scientist, not a politician. But something about the moment felt right. Angela decided to take a small step. She started helping with organizing meetings and writing speeches. She still worked at the lab during the day, but in the evenings, she was part of something new, something exciting. In 1990, East Germany held its first free elections. Angela worked hard for her party, helping with campaigns and talking to voters. It was a busy time, full of challenges. People were angry and scared about the future. They wanted answers. Angela didn't have all the answers, but she listened carefully to their concerns. That summer, East and West Germany agreed to reunite. The two countries became one again. It was a historic moment, full of hope and promise. Angela watched as the old borders disappeared. For the first time, East Germans could dream of a future without limits. Angela's own life was changing too. She was offered a position in the new government. It wasn't a big role, but it was a start. She accepted. She was nervous about leaving her job as a scientist, but she felt a sense of duty. Her first office was small and simple. She had a desk, a chair, and a pile of paperwork. Angela didn't mind. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She was good at solving problems, whether they were in the lab or in politics. But politics wasn't easy. Angela had to learn quickly. She read books about government and studied late into the night. She asked questions and listened to more experienced politicians. Slowly, she began to find her place. One day, Angela's boss called her into his office. He asked her to take on a bigger role. "You're talented, Angela," he said, "and you're exactly what we need right now. Someone smart, calm, and hard-working." Angela hesitated. She wasn't sure if she was ready. But then she thought about the wall, about how everything had changed so quickly. "If I can adapt to that," she thought, "I can adapt to this." She said yes. Angela began to climb the political ladder. She worked long hours, learning everything she could. She wasn't flashy or loud, but people noticed her steady, reliable nature. She became known as someone who listened carefully and acted wisely. Looking back, Angela often thought about the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was the moment that changed everything. It had opened a door she never expected to walk through. But once she did, she never looked back. The world was no longer divided by a wall, but it was still full of challenges. Angela was ready to face them. Step by step, she was building a new future, not just for herself, but for her country. Before we begin Chapter 6, a quick note for our listeners. You're currently listening to this audiobook on WooEnglish. Remember, this content is specially made for WooEnglish listeners only. If you're hearing it on any other channel, it may be a violation of WooEnglish's rights. Please ensure you're tuned into the right source to fully enjoy and respect this audiobook journey. Now, let's continue the story. Chapter 6. From Scientist to Politician. Angela never thought she would become a politician. She had spent years in the laboratory, working on equations and experiments. Science was her world. But after the fall of the Berlin Wall, everything changed. East Germany was transforming, and so was Angela. Angela joined the Democratic Awakening, a small political party. It was new and unorganized. The members were passionate but inexperienced. Angela worked quietly in the background, helping with speeches and organizing meetings. She didn't want to be in the spotlight. She just wanted to help rebuild her country. Her first steps in politics were not easy. Angela was shy, and the world of politics was loud and competitive. People argued over ideas and plans. They spoke passionately, waving their hands in the air. Angela watched carefully, listening more than she spoke. At first, many people didn't notice her. She wasn't the kind of person who demanded attention. She wasn't flashy or bold. Some even underestimated her. They thought she was too quiet, too ordinary. "She's just a scientist," they said. But Angela had something special. She was calm, hardworking, and incredibly smart. While others argued, Angela focused on solutions. She didn't waste time on drama. Instead, she got things done. One day, Angela was asked to help prepare a speech for the party leader. It was an important speech, and Angela worked late into the night, writing and rewriting. When the leader delivered the speech, it was a success. People in the party began to notice Angela. "You're talented," one member said. "You should take on a bigger role." Angela shook her head. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but deep down, she felt a spark of confidence. When East and West Germany reunified in 1990, Angela's party merged with a larger political group, the Christian Democratic Union, CDU. The CDU was powerful and well established. It was led by Helmut Kohl, the Chancellor of Germany. Angela suddenly found herself in a much bigger world. In her first election, Angela ran for a seat in the Bundestag, Germany's parliament. She campaigned in her local area, going door to door and talking to voters. Many people were surprised to see a quiet woman running for office. But Angela was determined. She listened to people's concerns and explained her ideas clearly. On election day, Angela won. She was now a member of parliament. It was a big step, but Angela didn't celebrate for long. There was work to do. Angela's first office in the Bundestag was small and simple. She shared it with another new politician. She didn't have much experience, so she spent her time learning. She read reports, attended meetings, and asked questions. She worked harder than anyone else. Chancellor Helmut Kohl noticed Angela. He saw her potential. In 1991, he gave her a surprising offer. He asked Angela to join his cabinet as the Minister for Women and Youth. It was a huge opportunity, but it was also intimidating. Angela was one of the youngest ministers, and she didn't have much political experience. Angela accepted the role. She knew it would be challenging, but she also knew it was a chance to make a difference. Her new job came with a fancy office and a busy schedule. She traveled across Germany, meeting with organizations and communities. She listened to their concerns and worked to improve their lives. Many people underestimated Angela at first. Some of her colleagues didn't take her seriously. They thought she was too quiet and inexperienced. But Angela didn't let this bother her. She stayed focused on her work. One day, Angela attended an important meeting with senior politicians. The room was full of powerful men. Angela felt nervous, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She spoke clearly and confidently, presenting her ideas. The room grew quiet. People were impressed. Angela had earned their respect. As minister, Angela worked on policies to support women and families. She helped create programs for childcare and education. She also worked to improve opportunities for women in the workplace. Her calm, practical approach won her praise. But Angela's rise in politics wasn't without challenges. She faced criticism and tough decisions. Some people didn't like her ideas. Others doubted her abilities. Angela handled these moments with grace. She listened carefully, stayed calm, and focused on finding solutions. Angela's scientific background helped her in unexpected ways. In science, she had learned to solve problems step by step. She used the same approach in politics. She didn't rush or make emotional decisions. Instead, she analyzed the situation carefully and acted logically. Over time, Angela's reputation grew. People began to see her as reliable and trustworthy. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but she was often the wisest. One evening, Angela reflected on how far she had come. Just a few years ago, she had been a scientist working in a small lab. Now, she was a government minister, helping to shape the future of Germany. It was a journey she hadn't expected, but she was proud of what she had achieved. In 1994, Angela took on a new role as the Minister for the Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety. It was a big step up. She had to deal with complex issues like climate change and energy policy. Once again, Angela threw herself into her work. She studied reports, listened to experts, and developed clear, practical policies. Angela's calm and steady leadership began to stand out. While other politicians made headlines with dramatic speeches, Angela quietly got things done. She was becoming a rising star in German politics. Looking back, Angela's journey from scientist to politician was remarkable. She had faced doubt and challenges at every step, but she never gave up. Her intelligence, determination, and quiet strength carried her forward. Angela didn't plan to become a politician, but she had found her place. She had learned to navigate a world of power and politics without losing her calm, thoughtful nature. And she was just getting started. Chapter 7. Climbing the Political Ladder. Angela's rise in politics was not smooth. It was a path filled with challenges. She had to prove herself at every step. Some people doubted her. Others tried to push her aside. But Angela didn't give up. She worked harder, stayed calm, and kept moving forward. In the early 1990s, Angela became the Minister for the Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety. This was a big responsibility. Germany was facing many environmental problems at the time. People were worried about pollution, climate change, and nuclear energy. Angela had to find solutions to these complex issues. She spent hours reading reports, meeting scientists, and learning about environmental policies. Her background in physics helped her understand the science behind the problems. She listened carefully to experts and asked smart questions. One day, Angela visited a town near a nuclear power plant. The people there were scared. They worried about safety and health risks. Angela stood in front of a large crowd, listening to their fears. She didn't make big promises or give emotional speeches. Instead, she explained the facts clearly and calmly. By the end of the meeting, many people felt reassured. But not everyone supported Angela's work. Some politicians criticized her ideas. They said she was too cautious. Others thought she wouldn't last in such a tough role. Angela heard their doubts, but didn't let them distract her. She focused on her work. One of Angela's biggest challenges came during a heated debate in the Bundestag. The topic was climate change, and the room was full of disagreement. Some politicians shouted and interrupted each other. Angela waited for her turn to speak. When it came, she stood up and spoke calmly. She explained the science behind climate change and the importance of action. The room grew quiet. Even her critics had to admit she made sense. Angela's steady leadership began to gain respect. People noticed her ability to stay calm under pressure. They admired her clear, logical thinking. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but she was often the most convincing. As Angela's reputation grew, so did her responsibilities. In 1998, her party, the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, lost the national election. It was a difficult time for the party. Many leaders stepped down, leaving the CDU in chaos. Angela stayed loyal to the party, even when others gave up. The CDU needed new leadership. Many senior members wanted to take control, but Angela surprised everyone. She stepped forward. "I'm ready to help rebuild the party," she said. At first, people were skeptical. Angela wasn't part of the CDU's old political network. She wasn't from West Germany like most of the party's leaders. Some doubted that a woman from East Germany could lead such a powerful organization. But Angela didn't let this stop her. She campaigned tirelessly, meeting with party members and presenting her ideas. She argued for honesty, reform, and a fresh start. Her calm and steady approach won people over. In 2000, Angela was elected as the leader of the CDU. It was a historic moment. She became the first woman and the first East German to lead the party. Angela's new role came with many challenges. The CDU was still recovering from its election loss, and there were scandals that damaged its reputation. Angela had to rebuild trust and unity within the party. She made tough decisions. Some senior members disagreed with her, but Angela didn't back down. She stood firm, even when it was difficult. Her strength surprised many people. One of Angela's most important qualities was her ability to learn. She listened carefully to experts and colleagues. She studied policies and strategies in detail. She prepared for every debate and meeting with great care. Angela's calm, logical style stood out in the male-dominated world of politics. Many politicians relied on loud speeches and big promises. Angela relied on facts and reason. This earned her respect, even from her opponents. But Angela's journey wasn't just about hard work. It was also about adapting to new challenges. In the early 2000s, Germany faced major economic problems. Unemployment was high, and people were frustrated. Angela worked with her team to create policies that helped improve the economy. As she climbed higher in politics, Angela remained humble. She didn't seek the spotlight. She focused on solving problems and helping people. Her quiet strength became her greatest asset. In 2005, Angela faced one of her biggest challenges yet. The national elections were approaching, and the CDU wanted her to lead their campaign. If the CDU won, Angela could become Germany's first female chancellor. Many people doubted she could succeed. Her opponents said she wasn't charismatic enough. Even some members of her own party were unsure. But Angela stayed calm. She worked hard on her campaign, traveling across the country and meeting with voters. During the debates, Angela's calm and logical style stood out. While her opponents made emotional arguments, Angela focused on facts and solutions. She didn't try to charm people with big speeches. Instead, she showed them she was serious and capable. On election night, the results came in. The CDU won the most seats in the Bundestag. Angela had done it. She was on her way to becoming the first female chancellor of Germany. Angela's rise to power was remarkable. She had faced doubt, criticism, and many obstacles. But she had proven herself again and again. Her intelligence, determination, and quiet strength had carried her to the top. Looking back, Angela's journey wasn't just about politics. It was about resilience and courage. She had shown that true leadership doesn't have to be loud or flashy. It can be calm, steady, and full of purpose. Angela was ready for the next chapter. She was about to take on one of the most important roles in the world, and she was ready to lead. Chapter 8. Germany's First Female Chancellor. It was a cold evening in November 2005. Angela Merkel sat quietly in her office, waiting for the final results. The Bundestag had just voted. If she won, she would become the first female chancellor in Germany's history. The weight of the moment was enormous. Angela felt calm on the outside, but her heart was racing. When the announcement came, Angela stood up slowly. She had won. She was now the leader of Germany, the first woman, the first person from East Germany. The room filled with applause, but Angela didn't smile right away. She was thinking about the responsibility ahead. That evening, celebrations broke out across the country. Angela's supporters cheered loudly, waving CDU flags in the air. Reporters rushed to share the news with the world. Germany had a new leader, and she was unlike any before. Angela's journey to this moment had been long and full of challenges. Just a few years earlier, many people had underestimated her. They thought she was too quiet, too ordinary. But Angela had proven them wrong. Step by step, she had climbed to the top. Now, she was standing at the center of history. The next morning, Angela gave her first speech as chancellor. She stood in front of the Bundestag, wearing her usual simple suit. Cameras flashed as she began to speak. Her voice was calm but firm. She talked about unity, hope, and hard work. She promised to lead with fairness and dedication. The room was silent as she spoke. Even her critics listened carefully. Angela's election was a symbol of change. For many women, it was a moment of pride. "If Angela can do it," one young woman said, "maybe I can too." But being the first woman in such a powerful position also came with challenges. Angela knew she would have to work even harder to prove herself. One of her first days as chancellor was unforgettable. She walked into the chancellery, Germany's center of power. The building was large and modern, with high ceilings and glass walls. Angela had visited it before as a minister, but now it felt different. It was hers. Angela's new office was simple but elegant. A large wooden desk sat in the center, and a German flag stood in the corner. Angela placed a small photo of her family on the desk. She wanted to remember where she came from. Her schedule was immediately full. Meetings with world leaders, discussions with her team, and interviews with the press filled her days. Angela worked long hours, often staying late into the night. She knew she had to be prepared for every decision, every question. But leading Germany wasn't easy. Angela faced many challenges from the start. The economy was struggling, unemployment was high, and people were worried about their future. Angela had to make tough decisions. One of her first major actions was to introduce reforms to help the economy. Some of these changes were unpopular. People protested in the streets, holding signs and shouting slogans. Angela listened carefully to their concerns. She understood their fears. But she also believed that the reforms were necessary. In difficult moments, Angela stayed calm. She didn't let criticism distract her. Instead, she focused on finding solutions. Her quiet strength became one of her greatest assets. Angela's leadership style was different from other politicians. She didn't make big, emotional speeches. She didn't try to charm people with grand promises. Instead, she focused on facts and careful planning. She believed in listening and thinking before acting. Her calm and logical approach won her respect, not just in Germany, but around the world. World leaders noticed her steady leadership. They admired her ability to stay focused, even in the most challenging situations. One of Angela's most memorable moments as Chancellor came during her first international summit. She met leaders from countries like the United States, France, and Russia. Some of them had been in power for years and were used to dominating discussions. Angela, however, made her presence known. She spoke clearly and confidently, earning their respect. Despite her busy schedule, Angela remained humble. She continued to live in her modest apartment in Berlin instead of moving into the grand chancellery residence. She still went grocery shopping herself and cooked simple meals at home. Angela's life wasn't all work. She loved to spend time with her husband, Joachim Sauer, and their friends. In her free time, she enjoyed reading books and hiking in the countryside. These small moments helped her stay grounded. As the months passed, Angela's popularity grew. People admired her for her hard work and dedication. They saw her as someone who cared deeply about her country. Even those who didn't agree with her policies respected her leadership. But Angela's journey as Chancellor was just beginning. There were still many challenges ahead. Global issues like climate change, economic crises, and international conflicts would test her leadership. Looking back, Angela often thought about her early years in East Germany. Growing up behind the Berlin Wall had taught her patience and resilience. Her scientific background had taught her to analyze problems and think logically. These qualities had prepared her for this moment. Angela had made history, but she didn't let it change who she was. She remained calm, thoughtful, and hardworking. She believed in leading with integrity and putting her country first. As she stood on the world stage, Angela knew that the road ahead would not be easy. But she was ready. She had faced challenges before, and she would face them again. Angela Merkel had become Germany's first female chancellor, and she was determined to lead with strength, wisdom, and heart. Chapter 9. The Euro Crisis, a Test of Strength. It was 2008. The world was in trouble. A financial crisis had begun in the United States and quickly spread to Europe. Banks were failing. Businesses were closing. People were losing their jobs. It was a time of fear and uncertainty. As Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel knew she had to act. The Eurozone, a group of European countries that shared the euro as their currency, was at risk. If one country's economy collapsed, it could pull down the others. Angela faced a monumental task: saving the euro and protecting Europe's future. The crisis hit Greece especially hard. The Greek government was deep in debt. They couldn't pay their bills, and their economy was collapsing. Other countries like Spain, Italy, and Portugal were also struggling. Angela and the other European leaders had to make tough decisions. Angela's approach was careful and logical, as always. She didn't rush into action. She studied the problem, listened to experts, and considered all the options. She wanted to find a solution that was fair but also effective. In 2010, the European Union created a rescue package to help Greece. They offered loans to keep the country afloat. But these loans came with conditions. Greece had to agree to strict economic reforms, including cutting government spending and raising taxes. Angela knew these measures would be unpopular. Many Greeks were angry. They blamed Germany for the strict conditions. Protesters marched in the streets, carrying signs that criticized Angela. Some called her the Iron Chancellor. Others compared her to past German leaders, using harsh words and images. Angela saw the protests on the news. She understood their anger, but she believed the reforms were necessary. "We have to act responsibly," she said. "This is about the future of Europe." At the same time, Angela faced criticism at home. Some Germans didn't want to help Greece. "Why should we pay for their mistakes?" they asked. Angela explained that saving Greece was not just about one country. It was about protecting the entire Eurozone. The pressure was immense. Angela worked long hours, meeting with European leaders and negotiating deals. The meetings were tense. Some leaders wanted quick solutions, while others refused to compromise. Angela stayed calm. She listened carefully and pushed for practical answers. One of Angela's strengths was her ability to build trust. Even when leaders disagreed with her, they respected her calm and steady approach. French President Nicolas Sarkozy worked closely with Angela during the crisis. Although their styles were very different, he was emotional and passionate, while she was calm and logical. They formed a strong partnership. The crisis dragged on for years. Each time a solution seemed close, another problem would arise. Angela often had to make tough decisions, knowing they would upset people. She faced criticism from all sides. Some said she was too strict. Others said she wasn't doing enough. But Angela didn't let the criticism stop her. She believed in her decisions and stayed focused on her goal: saving the euro. One of the hardest moments came in 2012. Greece was on the brink of leaving the Eurozone. If that happened, it could have caused a chain reaction, with other countries following. Angela worked tirelessly to prevent this. She met with Greek leaders, urging them to stay. She convinced other European leaders to support another rescue package. Finally, a deal was reached. Greece stayed in the Eurozone, but the reforms continued. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough to keep the euro alive. Throughout the crisis, Angela showed incredible resilience. She didn't let the pressure break her. Instead, she used her calm, logical approach to navigate the challenges. By 2015, the Eurozone was starting to recover. The worst of the crisis was over. Angela's leadership had been a key factor in stabilizing the economy. She had faced criticism, protests, and sleepless nights, but she had stayed true to her principles. Looking back, the Euro crisis was one of the biggest tests of Angela's leadership. It showed her ability to stay calm under pressure, to make tough decisions, and to bring people together. Not everyone agreed with her methods, but few could deny her determination and strength. Angela had proven, once again, that she was a leader for difficult times. As the crisis faded, Angela didn't celebrate. There was still work to do. She knew the recovery would take time, and new challenges were always on the horizon. But she also knew she had the strength to face them. Chapter 10. Leading in a Time of Global Change. Angela Merkel had already faced many challenges as Germany's chancellor. But the world was changing, and new crises demanded her attention. Climate change, refugee migration, and global conflicts were some of the biggest issues of her time. Angela's leadership would be tested again. One of Angela's priorities was fighting climate change. Germany was known for its strong industry, but this came with a cost: pollution. Factories and power plants used coal, which created greenhouse gases. Angela believed Germany needed to lead by example. She worked with her government to create plans for a cleaner future. They invested in renewable energy, like wind and solar power. Angela often talked about the importance of protecting the planet. "We owe it to the next generation," she said. But change was not easy. Some industries resisted her policies. They argued that switching to renewable energy was too expensive. Angela listened to their concerns but didn't back down. She believed that protecting the environment was worth the cost. At international meetings, Angela urged other leaders to take action on climate change. She spoke calmly but firmly, using facts to make her case. Many admired her determination. Over time, Germany became a global leader in renewable energy. Another major challenge came in 2015. War and violence in countries like Syria and Afghanistan forced millions of people to flee their homes. Refugees traveled across dangerous seas and long roads, hoping for safety in Europe. Many of them came to Germany. Angela faced a difficult decision. Some European leaders wanted to close their borders. They said there were too many refugees and not enough resources. But Angela felt differently. She believed that Germany had a responsibility to help. In a famous speech, she said, "We can do this." Those 4 words became a symbol of her approach to the refugee crisis. Angela opened Germany's borders to over 1 million refugees. It was a bold and controversial decision. Some Germans welcomed the refugees with open arms. Others were afraid. They worried about the impact on jobs, housing, and safety. Angela understood their concerns, but she believed helping the refugees was the right thing to do. The months that followed were difficult. Refugees arrived in large numbers, and the government worked day and night to provide food, shelter, and support. Volunteers across Germany stepped in to help. Schools, hospitals, and communities made room for the newcomers. Angela visited refugee centers and listened to their stories. Many had lost their homes, families, and everything they owned. Their journeys were heartbreaking. Angela's calm, caring presence gave them hope. But not everyone supported her decision. Protests broke out in some cities. Political opponents criticized her, saying she had taken on too much. Angela stood her ground. "It's not about what is easy," she said. "It's about what is right." The refugee crisis changed Germany in many ways. It brought new challenges, but it also showed the country's strength and compassion. Angela's leadership inspired millions, both in Germany and around the world. Angela also worked on other global issues. She played a key role in international efforts to combat terrorism. She met with world leaders to discuss strategies for peace and security. Angela wasn't a loud or dramatic leader, but she was respected for her steady and thoughtful approach. One of Angela's strengths was her ability to bring people together. She listened carefully to different viewpoints and worked to find common ground. At global summits, she often acted as a mediator, helping to resolve disagreements. In 2020, the world faced another crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus spread quickly, affecting millions of people. Angela had to act fast to protect Germany. She spoke directly to the nation, explaining the situation clearly. "This is serious," she said. "We must all work together." Her calm and honest words reassured people. Angela worked with scientists and health experts to create a plan. She encouraged people to wear masks, wash their hands, and stay home when necessary. She also supported efforts to develop vaccines. The pandemic was a difficult time for everyone. Many people lost loved ones, jobs, and a sense of normal life. Angela worked tirelessly to help Germany through the crisis. She reminded people to stay strong and care for one another. Through all these challenges, Angela remained humble. She didn't seek fame or praise. She focused on her work and let her actions speak for themselves. Angela's leadership during times of global change showed her strength and character. She stayed calm under pressure, listened carefully, and made decisions based on reason and compassion. By the end of her time as Chancellor, Angela had become one of the most respected leaders in the world. She had faced crises that could have broken others, but she had stayed steady and strong. Angela's story was not just about solving problems. It was about inspiring others. She showed that leadership is not about power or popularity. It's about doing what is right, even when it's hard. As she prepared to step down as Chancellor, Angela reflected on her journey. She had faced wars, crises, and global challenges. She had made difficult decisions and learned valuable lessons. And through it all, she had stayed true to her values. Angela Merkel's leadership had made a difference. Not just for Germany, but for the world. Chapter 11. Behind the Scenes. The Real Angela. Angela Merkel was one of the most powerful leaders in the world. She made decisions that affected millions of people. But behind the scenes, who was she? What was Angela like when the cameras were off? Angela lived a simple life, even as Chancellor. She didn't like luxury or fame. She didn't own a big house or expensive cars. Instead, she lived in a modest apartment in Berlin with her husband, Joachim Sauer. Joachim was a quiet and private man. He was a scientist, just like Angela. The couple shared a love for learning and enjoyed discussing ideas. Joachim rarely appeared in public, but he supported Angela's work from behind the scenes. In her free time, Angela loved to read. Books were her escape from the pressures of politics. She especially enjoyed novels and biographies. Reading helped her relax and gave her new perspectives on the world. Angela also loved to cook. After long days at work, she found peace in her kitchen. Her favorite dish to make was potato soup, a traditional German meal. She liked to cook for friends and family, and she often joked about her simple recipes. Despite her serious image in public, Angela had a great sense of humor. She enjoyed telling jokes and laughing with her team. People who worked closely with her often said she had a warm and kind personality. One day, during a long meeting, Angela noticed that everyone was tired. The room was quiet, and the mood was heavy. Angela suddenly made a light-hearted comment about how her soup-making skills might be better than her political skills. The room burst into laughter. Moments like these showed her human side. Angela also loved nature. She enjoyed walking in the countryside away from the noise of the city. When she had time, she visited her holiday home in the village of Uckermark, where she had grown up. There, she could garden, enjoy the fresh air, and watch the changing seasons. She once said, "When I'm outside, I feel free. It helps me think more clearly." Angela's quiet strength came from her upbringing. Growing up in East Germany taught her to stay calm and think deeply. She didn't waste energy on anger or frustration. Instead, she focused on finding solutions. Her patience was one of her most admired qualities. Even in the most difficult situations, Angela remained composed. She listened carefully and thought before speaking. This calmness inspired the people around her. However, Angela's life wasn't always easy. Being chancellor meant long hours and constant pressure. She rarely had time for herself. Many nights she worked late into the evening, reading reports and preparing for meetings. Angela's health was also a concern. During public events, she was sometimes seen shaking uncontrollably. This led to speculation about her health, but Angela never let it stop her. She kept working, showing incredible determination. Although Angela didn't have children of her own, she cared deeply about the next generation. She often spoke about the importance of education and opportunities for young people. She believed that investing in the future was one of her greatest responsibilities. Angela's leadership style was unique. She wasn't loud or emotional. She didn't seek attention or applause. Instead, she led with humility and intelligence. She believed in teamwork and often said, "Leadership is about listening." Her staff admired her dedication. Angela treated everyone with respect, from her closest advisors to the people who cleaned her office. She remembered birthdays, asked about their families, and thanked them for their hard work. One of Angela's most remarkable qualities was her ability to separate her personal life from her work. She rarely talked about her private life in public. This mystery added to her image as a focused and disciplined leader. However, small details sometimes came to light. For example, Angela loved football, soccer. She was a passionate fan of the German national team. She attended matches when she could and cheered loudly from the stands. One famous moment showed her excitement during the 2014 World Cup. Germany had just scored a goal, and cameras captured Angela jumping out of her seat, clapping and smiling. It was a rare glimpse of her unguarded joy. Angela also enjoyed music. She loved classical pieces, especially works by Bach and Wagner. Music helped her relax and recharge during her rare moments of rest. Despite her busy life, Angela valued friendship. She kept in touch with old friends from her school and university days. These friendships gave her a sense of stability in a fast-changing world. Angela was also known for her love of science and curiosity about the world. Even as chancellor, she often asked experts detailed questions about their fields. Her scientific training taught her to seek facts and make decisions based on evidence. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Angela spoke to her staff about what motivated her. "I've seen so much change in my life," she said. "I've learned that even the biggest challenges can be overcome with patience, courage, and hope." Those words summed up the real Angela Merkel. She was a leader who stayed true to herself, no matter how difficult the circumstances. Her love for learning, her kindness, and her quiet strength made her not just a great leader, but a remarkable person. As Angela prepared to step down from her role as chancellor, she reflected on her journey. She was proud of what she had achieved, but looked forward to living a quieter life. She planned to read more books, take long walks, and spend time with her husband. Behind the scenes, Angela Merkel was not just a leader. She was a thoughtful, kind, and humble person. Her legacy would inspire generations to come. Chapter 12. An Inspiring Legacy. In 2021, Angela Merkel stepped down as Germany's chancellor after 16 years. It was the end of an era. She had led Germany through some of its most difficult times: wars, crises, and global challenges. Angela faced them all with calm determination. Her departure was met with mixed emotions. Many people admired her strength and leadership. They couldn't imagine Germany without her steady hand. Others felt it was time for change. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. Angela had left a lasting legacy. Angela's journey was remarkable. She was born in East Germany, behind the Iron Curtain. She grew up in a divided country where opportunities were limited. Yet, she rose to become one of the most powerful leaders in the world. Her story inspired millions. It showed that intelligence, patience, and hard work could overcome even the biggest obstacles. Angela didn't follow a traditional path to politics. She didn't seek power or fame. She was a scientist, a thinker, and a problem solver. When Angela became chancellor in 2005, she made history as the first woman to hold the position. She didn't just break barriers, she shattered them. Her success showed young girls everywhere that they could dream big and achieve anything. Angela led Germany through major crises. The Euro crisis tested her economic skills. She made tough decisions to save Europe's shared currency. Some criticized her, but her calm and logical approach brought stability to the region. In 2015, Angela faced one of her biggest challenges, the refugee crisis. Her decision to open Germany's borders to over 1 million refugees was bold and controversial. Some praised her compassion, others feared the impact on Germany. But Angela believed it was the right thing to do. Through it all, Angela remained steady. She didn't let criticism shake her. She stayed focused on her goals, building a stronger, more united Germany and Europe. Angela's leadership style was unique. She wasn't loud or dramatic. She didn't rely on flashy speeches or emotional appeals. Instead, she listened carefully, thought deeply, and acted decisively. Her quiet strength earned her respect around the world. Leaders admired her calm, measured approach to solving problems. Many saw her as a voice of reason in uncertain times. Angela often said, "Leadership is about serving others." She lived by those words. She didn't seek personal glory. Instead, she worked tirelessly for her country and its people. After stepping down, Angela returned to a quieter life. She moved back to her modest apartment in Berlin with her husband, Joachim Sauer. She looked forward to spending time with him, reading books, and walking in the countryside. But Angela's influence didn't end with her time as chancellor. Her legacy continued to inspire people around the world. She showed that true leadership isn't about power or popularity. It's about courage, intelligence, and heart. Angela led with integrity, always staying true to her values. One of the most important lessons from Angela's story is the power of resilience. She faced challenges at every stage of her life, from growing up in East Germany to leading through global crises. But she never gave up. She adapted, learned, and grew stronger. Another lesson is the importance of listening. Angela believed in understanding different viewpoints before making decisions. Her ability to bring people together was one of her greatest strengths. Angela also taught us the value of humility. Despite her incredible achievements, she remained modest. She didn't seek the spotlight or crave recognition. She focused on her work and let her actions speak for themselves. In her farewell speech, Angela thanked the German people for their trust. "It has been an honor to serve you," she said. Her voice was calm, but her words were filled with emotion. As Angela stepped away from politics, she left behind a legacy of hope. She showed the world that leadership can be kind, thoughtful, and strong. She proved that even in the face of great challenges, we can find solutions through patience and determination. Angela's name will be remembered not just as a leader, but as a symbol of resilience and wisdom. Her story is a reminder that anyone, no matter where they come from, can make a difference. As she walked out of the Chancellery for the last time, Angela smiled. The weight of leadership was finally lifted from her shoulders. But her impact would last forever. The world had changed during Angela's time as Chancellor, and she had been a big part of that change. She had led with courage, intelligence, and heart. Angela Merkel's legacy is one of hope and inspiration. She showed us that quiet strength can change the world.